Okay, welcome back. Just to avoid any confusion, if that last video, you are in the right place. Operation Urgent Fury, I just couldn't have told that story better than I did. I don't feel so. I just did a little editing on a previous video, and the pardons came up at the very end, so don't be confused by that. So we come to the cabinet. The Constitution says he may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices. So this is the constitutional authorization for the cabinet, and there are quite a few agencies. These guys run their agencies on behalf of the president with his direction and trying to pursue his agenda, and they'll give the president advice when he asks for it. And there's no real formal requirement for get-togethers. It's really just whenever the president of the day desires a meeting of the cabinet. And a cabinet meeting can be anything from very serious business meetings where the work of the people gets done to self-congratulatory type events where they all congratulate themselves on being masters of the universe, and the press takes a lot of pictures, and it's a big party. I mean, it runs the gambit from very serious to what I just described. But there's no formal requirements. They can meet with the president whenever they want. Well, the president can meet with them whenever he wants. So this is just what I just said, really. So the cabinet level agencies and their heads are as follows. I would, if I were you, remember these names. But Mr. Parker, I'm not good at memorizing names, I hear you say. I would say to you, this is just a good citizenship thing. You should know who the Secretary of State is. If somebody talks about Janet Yellen, you should be able to recall that she's the Secretary of the Treasury. General Lloyd Austin, Secretary Austin as he now is, runs defense. I'm not going to ask you about any other cabinet officers because, quite frankly, they don't get brought up too much, maybe with the exception of the Attorney General. But you should know who these three are, at the very least. And you definitely will be tested on who these three are. So there's the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland. Yes, that Merrick Garland is the Attorney General now. And we have a Department of the Interior, Department of Agriculture, Department of Commerce. I mean, all sorts of things. Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Housing and Urban Development. That's abbreviated sometimes HUD, Housing, Urban Development. And Transportation, Mayor Pete. I'm not even going to attempt the last name. I never could say it. Department of Energy, Department of Education, Veterans Affairs, and Homeland Security. And that comes last, again, because that was a Bush II invention. We didn't have a Department of Homeland Security before his presidency. So the vice president can also be part of the cabinet. Well, she is, in this case, part of the cabinet, kind of de facto. And there can be additions and subtractions depending on the administration. And we're going to take a look at what those are. So the Vice President, Secretary of State, everybody we just went through. It's good to put, names to faces. But what I'm interested in is down here. So Michael Regan, the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, that's a cabinet level post in this administration. Sometimes it's not. It's just up to the president. The DNI, she's normally, and he, it's been both genders. They are a part of the cabinet, usually in every administration. The trade representative, the ambassador to the United Nations. Mr. Biden has chosen to make a cabinet-level position. And Cecilia Rouse, who's the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. So it's a rather large cabinet in this case. So Dr. Eric Lander, the Presidential Science Advisor and Director of the Office of Science and Technology. That's a new one. I don't think that's there before. And the Chief of Staff is usually part of the cabinet too. So it's just up to the president of the day who they want to be in their cabinet. So Bush 43's UN ambassador wasn't a cabinet officer. Republicans traditionally place less value on the United Nations than Democratic presidents do. So, but instead, he gave the cabinet rank to the director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy. That position. And there's no mandate for who's in the cabinet and who's not. I mean, it's up to the president. And just what we went through, the U.S. Trade Representative, the Chief of Staff, DNI, the CIA Director, typically are staples in there as well from administration to administration. So then we come back to pardons. Now, President Biden hasn't issued any pardons or acts of clemency yet. That's typically not something that's done until maybe around the midterm time or the end of a presidential term. So, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. So this can be fairly wide-ranging. He can grant posthumous pardons, which means he can grant pardons to people who have passed on. So, since President Biden hasn't issued any pardons or acts of clemency yet, we have to look at some of what President Trump has done. So he pardoned Louis Libby, who for some reason chooses to be known as Scooter. He was Dick Cheney's chief of staff. He obstructed justice, gave false statements, so that's perjury, 2 counts of perjury, and his sentence was 30 months imprisonment, 2 years supervised release, and a $250,000 fine. And that was in 2007. So I would urge you to copy this link into your browser and watch the video. It's a news clip about Libby and when he was pardoned. And here are the sources that tell you a little bit more about it. I wish I could play this stuff for you. I really do. If we were in a classroom together, I would. But again, copyright rules. So, Jack Johnson. This was a posthumous pardon that President Trump granted. It was a different time, and he violated the White Slave Traffic Act in the Northern District of Illinois. So Johnson's story, he was the heavyweight champion boxer, and he had a white girlfriend, and he was the son of slaves. So Johnson took his girlfriend. She got in the car willingly. There was no, nothing. It was, and crossed a state line, and that was against the law back in 1920. So he had to pay $1,000 fine, which was a lot of money back then, and served a year and a day in prison. When you watch, and I encourage you again to watch this YouTube link. I mean, you got to paste it into your browser. President Trump says he violated some different act, but this is right off the Department of Justice website, so we're going with the violation of the White Slave Traffic Act. But that's a posthumous pardon. That's typically done for family members of the deceased, just as kind of a I'm sorry on behalf of the federal government for an injustice. And that's kind of what this was. His Jack Johnson's great niece was in the Oval Office with Trump when he signed that pardon. So then we come to treaties. So what we're going to look at is the North American Free Trade Agreement, which has since been revamped, but it serves the purpose for this. So he shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. So this is a check and a balance. The president, yes, can negotiate and make the terms of a treaty, but the Senate of the United States has to approve it by a 2/3 vote. So Bill Clinton was president when this came into agreement, but it was Bush the Elder who got the ball rolling on it. And I would highly encourage you to watch this. This is more of an interactive unit. You're not going to get as much out of it if you just are listening to me talk and you don't click on these links. So, yeah, there's another one there. They're not terribly long. So this was the Senate at the time. It was a very highly contentious agreement. And again, I would urge you to pause me and watch those videos at this time. So, would the agreement bring jobs to the United States? That didn't prove necessarily to be the case. Would it help the economy? It certainly helped the economy of Mexico. It helped our economy and the economy of Canada a little bit. Is it good for the American workers? Was another question that was asked at the time. Debatable. But it passed the Senate with the needed majority, 61-38. And you can see the record of the vote if you click this link right here. All right. So nominations and appointments. We went over the Supreme Court and all that. So I choose to cover ambassadorial appointments. So, and he shall nominate and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. But the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the President alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments. So that is his power to make appointments, but with a check, right? the legislature gets involved. So this lady, we don't have a lot of ambassadors out right now. It's still pretty early in the term, and the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee probably hasn't had a great chance to hear a lot of these appointments, and especially with COVID and all that. So the United States ambassador to the Court of St. James, there isn't an ambassador at the moment. The charge d'affaires is the second in command. Think of it like that. That her name is Yale Lempert, and that's who's pictured here. And she's been in charge since Woody Johnson, who was the former ambassador during Trump's term, resigned at the end of the Trump administration, and we haven't filled that spot yet. To the best of my knowledge, there hasn't even been an appointment announced at this time. There is an Italian ambassador. He's been there since 2016. He covers San Marino as well. There's an ambassador in New Zealand. Yeah, but there aren't too terribly many around the world at the moment. But these high-profile ambassadorships, like the United Kingdom, they'll oftentimes go to very wealthy donors of the incumbent president, because we don't need seasoned diplomats in the United Kingdom or in France or in Italy. Any of the Western European countries, really, we have had and continue to enjoy fairly stable relations with those countries. Now, the other reason these types of ambassadorships go to wealthy people is because this is where the UK ambassador lives, Winfield House, which looks like it's got at least 18 bedrooms. I just counted the windows there. The State Department budget certainly does not cover that. And a United States ambassador is supposed to host gatherings from time to time and, keep up and be a part of, in this case, London society. And he can't really do that or represent our country well if he lives in a dilapidated, falling down home. So these guys sink their own money into renovating, in this case, Winfield House, but there are other residences in other countries. So the Senate hearings, this is funny. Watch this one first. I show you a lot of stuff going well, but this is a hearing that went entirely off the rails, and you'll see why when you watch this. So watch this second link first, and then go to the first link. And Anderson Cooper grabbed the late Senator John McCain after I think he got out of this hearing for an interview. So this guy in the second clip in the first clip you're supposed to watch is called George James Souness, and Obama nominated him to go to Norway, and he's questioned by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and it just went desperately wrong. And afterwards, Mr. Souness withdrew his nomination, and rightfully so. And watch this, and you'll see why. So the president also has the power to make recess appointments. So our teaching assistant here, as you can see, is joining us to talk about these recess appointments. And the president shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate, by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. That is the constitutional authority for that. This is President Eisenhower. He made two very famous recess appointments to the Supreme Court. Presidents have used the recess clause that I just read to fill labor boards all the way up to Supreme Court seats. And President Eisenhower famously used it, and thank goodness he did, because Justice Brennan was a magnificent jurist, to appoint Justice Brennan to the Supreme Court in 1956. And he used the same clause again to appoint Chief Justice Warren, Earl Warren, a few years prior during a Senate recess. And I don't know that this would happen today, but the Senate took a look at the job these two guys were doing and decided to confirm them after their nominations were up and they needed to be reconfirmed. Don't know if that would happen today. Probably not. But they did a good job and continued to do so until they left the bench. So recess appointments can backfire, and backfire in a big way sometimes. And this has been a more recent development. So in 2014, the Supreme Court overturned 3 Obama recess appointments to the National Labor Relations Board, which is the biggest labor board, the most powerful, in the country. And they said that the president had overstepped his constitutional authority in making those appointments because it was there was some argument about whether the Senate was in recess, and that is a big part of it. Well, the TA needed a milk break, so let's continue. So yeah, now there is this real kind of murkiness about when a legislative chamber like the Senate or the House sometimes too is in recess and when it's not. So they came up, the legislature, with this real neat trick where they can stay in session and most of them can be back in their districts. So a recess has to, which I'll talk about in a minute, so a recess has to last at least 10 days before the president can legally make an appointment now. And the Supreme Court, as I said, they gave this loophole to the Senate that they can use to leave town and go back to their states or wherever it is they go, but stop the president from having free reign. So they go into these pro forma sessions. And really what this is, a majority has to decide, all right, we're going to take a break, but we're going to be in pro forma sessions. And a handful of them stick around and come into the Senate on a Monday or something like that. The clerk bangs the gavel. The Senate of the United States is now in session. The clerk will call the roll. The presiding officer, and then the clerk calls the roll. White House here, Paul here, Parker here. Okay. Everybody's here. There's no business on the calendar. The Senate stands adjourned until such and such a day. And they can keep this up for a long time before they have to actually, do something. But this exists really almost entirely to stop a president from making recess appointments. And as I said, the Senate can gavel into session with no legislative business at all and claim that it has been in session because they in fact have, The The clerk will call the roll. Okay, yada, 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 yada. Yeah, okay, I get that. Constitutes being in session. And doesn't take any time at all. The senators are in the chamber for like 20 seconds, a minute. They're in and out real quick. And the majority of the Senate is needed to decide to go into a pro forma session. So, right now that might be a little difficult, because I'm a little murky myself as to whether the Vice President can vote on whether or not to go into a pro forma session. That's an extra credit opportunity. You know what? That's an extra credit opportunity right there. Can the Vice President, we'll see who's watching these videos, can the Vice President cast a vote in favor of going into a pro forma session? 5 points. Due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Extra credit opportunity right there. So there are other legal avenues for the president here. He could just name an acting official, like the Attorney General or the Secretary of State or whoever under the Federal Vacancies Reform Act. But the problem here is that's a very thin list of people that he can choose from, because they already would have had to undergo Senate confirmation for another job. So, I mean, very thin. I mean, let's look at the State Department. You have Hillary Clinton, you have John Kerry, you have Madeleine Albright. I think she's still alive. You have Colin Powell. That's all I'm thinking of. Oh, Henry Kissinger, he's still kicking. So maybe 5. I'm sure I'm missing 1 or 2, but maybe 5 living secretaries of state, right now. I don't know what Biden really would look for in a nominee if that position became vacant, but not a very robust list of people. So then there's the State of the Union. So he shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the state of the Union, and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. He may, on extraordinary occasions, convene both houses, or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them, with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he shall think proper. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and shall commission all the officers of the United States. So I would encourage you to get on YouTube and Google, get on YouTube and search Trump State of the Union highlights 2020. If you've never seen a State of the Union, I mean, a State of the Union can go on for over an hour, and often does. So, highlights, they're on there. And in that way, you can see what this is. And the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. This has happened 4 times in the history of our country, twice in the last presidential term. But in all cases, they were acquitted by the Senate. So here's an interesting article. Again, YouTube gets funny about copyright, so it's about Andrew Johnson, who was Abraham Lincoln's vice president and was impeached for violating an act passed by Congress that would prohibit the firing of cabinet-level officials. And he did, and he got impeached and missed being convicted by 1 vote. And you can read more there. So we're going to move on now to the War Powers lecture. And We'll see you over there.